I'm Tara, 38, and literally last weekend, my rep as the tech world's quiet billionaire? Yeah, it backfired. The empire I'd worked my butt off to build from nothing? It blew up into a full-on family ambush at my own mansion. My adoptive family, the ones who'd iced me out 15 years ago when I uncovered the truth of my adoption, showed up uninvited, noses high, demanding a multi-million-dollar bailout. They'd read about my latest deal in the Wall Street Journal and thought they could waltz back in. I clapped back with a calm, "You don't get to rewrite history." And the room went dead silent. "You're no family to her?" My assistant Lena snapped from the corner, everyone staring like deer in headlights. But here's the tea. Their audacity didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note. This story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Guest Stories. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The day started with me pacing my office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Silicon Valley's sprawl below. My smartwatch buzzed. Another email from my CFO about the impending merger that could cement my company as a tech titan. I'd built this from a single laptop in a dingy studio apartment, fueled by grit and sleepless nights. Yet, as I skimmed the email, my stomach knotted. Not about the deal, but the text I'd gotten that morning. "Tara? We're coming to talk. Family business." It was from my adoptive mother, Diane, her tone as cold as ever. I hadn't seen her, or my adoptive siblings, Mark and Claire, in over a decade. Not since that humid summer night when I was 23, when they sat me down in their cramped dining room and confirmed I was adopted, their faces stone, like I'd betrayed them by existing. I leaned back in my chair, fingers brushing the polished mahogany desk. The memory stung. Diane's clipped, "We took you in, Tara, but you're not really ours," and Mark's smirk as he added, "Don't expect a seat at the table." Claire just looked away, twirling her hair, silent. They'd cast me out, emotionally and physically, leaving me to fend for myself. I'd clawed my way up, turning pain into code, into apps, into billions. Now they were coming, and I knew why. The journal's headline had screamed my name. Tara Klein's Quantum Leap, $10 valuation. They smelled money. I stood, smoothing my blazer, and glanced at the mirror by my office door. My reflection showed sharp cheekbones, dark curls pulled back, and eyes that hid the hurt. I wasn't that scared 23-year-old anymore. Lena poked her head in, her usual warmth replaced with a frown. "They're pulling up in a rented Mercedes," she said, rolling her eyes. "Want me to send them away?" I shook my head. "Let them in, I need to see this through." She nodded, loyal as ever, her fingers already texting security to stay close. The mansion's foyer echoed as I descended the spiral staircase, my heels clicking on marble. Outside, car doors slammed. I caught my breath, steadying myself against the banister. Diane's voice, sharp and entitled, carried through the open door. "This place is obscene for one person." Mark's laugh followed, low and mocking. Claire's heels tapped impatiently. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. But they didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment, not with anger but with something sharper. I'd spent years collecting proof of their neglect, their cruelty, tucked away in a folder on my desk. Today wasn't about their redemption, it was about mine. The doorbell chimed, a low, resonant gong. I straightened, shoulders back, and nodded to Lena, who swung the door open. There they stood. Diane, her lips pursed, gray hair pinned tightly. Mark, broader now, his suit ill-fitting. Claire, clutching a designer bag like a shield. Their eyes widened at the chandelier, the art on the walls, the sheer scale of my world. "Tara," Diane said, her voice syrupy, "you've done well." I didn't flinch, didn't smile. "Come in," I said, gesturing to the living room. My tone was even, but my pulse raced. They shuffled in, their confidence faltering as they took in the space. My space. Lena hovered nearby, her gaze sharp, ready to jump in. I sat across from them, hands folded, and waited. They thought they could claim a piece of me again? They were wrong. As we settled into the living room, the plush couches swallowing their hesitant forms, I watched Diane's eyes dart around, calculating the value of every vase and painting. Mark crossed his legs, his shoes scuffing the rug slightly, while Claire fiddled with her bag's zipper, avoiding my gaze. The air hung heavy with unspoken expectations, but before they could launch into whatever scripted plea they had prepared, my mind pulled me back. It was like a reflex. This flood of memories triggered by their familiar scents. Diane's floral perfume, Mark's aftershave, Claire's mint gum. I sat there, hands clasped in my lap, knuckles whitening, and let the past wash over me. Not in anger, not yet, but in a quiet tally of all the times they'd made me invisible, celebrating everyone but me. It started with the small things, back when I was a kid, but the real sting came during my early 20s, right before the big reveal about my adoption. I remembered one particular family dinner, about 18 years ago, when I was 20 and had just landed my first coding gig at a startup. We'd gathered at their old house, the one with the sagging porch and faded wallpaper. The table was laden with Diane's pot roast, steam rising, forks clinking. I'd burst in, excited, my cheeks flushed from the bus ride. "Guys, I got the job. They're paying me to build apps, real ones that'll go live," I said, sliding into my seat, expecting at least a nod. Diane had paused, her serving spoon hovering, then set it down with a soft click. "That's nice, Tara," she murmured, her eyes sliding past me to Mark. "But let's hear about your brother. Mark, tell us again about that promotion at the bank." Mark leaned back, grinning, his fingers drumming the table. "Yeah, Mom, it's a step up, managing accounts now, real responsibility." Claire chimed in, her voice bubbly, "And I aced my nursing exam, top of the class." The room erupted in praise, Diane's proud smile, hugs all around, even a toast with clinking glasses. I sat there, my plate untouched, forcing a smile while my stomach twisted. My achievement? Buried under their chatter. No questions about what the app did, no "good job." Just a quick glance my way, like I was an afterthought. I shifted in my seat now, in the present, my fingers tracing the armrest's seam. That night had set the pattern. Another flash hit me, my college graduation, 4 years later. I'd double majored in computer science and business, graduated summa cum laude. The ceremony was in a stuffy auditorium, diplomas handed out under bright lights. I'd invited them, hoping for once they'd show. They did, but barely. Diane complained about the traffic the whole drive home, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. At dinner that night, a chain restaurant, nothing fancy, Claire announced she'd gotten engaged. "To Tom. He proposed last week," she squealed, flashing a ring that caught the fluorescent lights. Mark slapped her back, laughing. "Way to go, sis, that's huge." Diane teared up, hugging her. My diploma? It sat on the table, unopened. "Oh, Tara graduated too," Diane said offhandedly when the waiter asked about the occasion. No photos of me in my cap and gown, no proud posts on their social media. I remember clenching my napkin under the table, nails digging into my palm, fighting back the lump in my throat. Why bother speaking up? It never changed anything. The memories piled on, each one sharper. There was the time I won a hackathon at 22, my team building an AI prototype that got featured in a local tech blog. I printed the article, brought it home like a trophy. "Look at this," I'd said, unfolding it on the kitchen counter. Diane skimmed it, her brows furrowing. "Tech stuff? That's interesting." Then turning to Claire, "Honey, how was your shift at the hospital? Saving lives, that's real work." Mark snorted from the couch, remote in hand. "Yeah, apps are cool, but I closed a big loan today, put a family in their dream home." I folded the paper slowly, creases sharp under my fingers, and slipped it into my bag. No one asked to read it fully. That night, I lay in my old room staring at the ceiling crack, tears silent on my pillow. Their world revolved around normal successes, jobs with suits, weddings, houses. My tech wins? Alien, unworthy. Even holidays reinforced it. Christmas, 5 years before the adoption bomb dropped. I'd saved up to fly home my first bonus from freelancing code. Gifts under the tree, practical things like a scarf for Diane, tools for Mark. But when we opened them, the focus shifted. Claire got a promotion to head nurse, cheers, photos. Mark bought his first car, high fives. Me? I'd just sold my first indie app for $5,000. "That's pocket change," Mark joked, elbowing me. Diane nodded, stacking wrapping paper. "Proud of you kids," she said, but her eyes lingered on them. I gripped my mug, hot chocolate burning my tongue, swallowing the hurt. Why was I always the shadow? Back in the living room now, I blinked, pulling myself from the depths. Diane cleared her throat, her fingers twisting a tissue. "Tara, we should talk," she started, but I held up a hand, not ready yet. The flashbacks weren't just pain, they were fuel. Each ignored milestone had pushed me harder, into late nights coding, building what became my empire. They'd celebrated their safe paths, but mine? it soared in silence. Claire shifted, her heel tapping softly. Mark's knee bounced. They had no idea how deep this ran, how their dismissals had carved me. But soon they'd feel it. I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady. "Before we get into why you're here," I said, "let's remember where we left off." My mind lingered on one last memory, my 23rd birthday. The day after I found the adoption papers in Diane's drawer, I'd confronted them, heart pounding, papers shaking in my hand. "Why hide this?" I'd asked. Diane's face hardened, lips thin. "You're not blood, we did our duty." Mark and Claire nodded, no defense. That was the final erasure. No more invites, no calls. Until now. The room felt smaller, their presence suffocating. But I breathed deep, chest rising slowly. This history wasn't just mine to carry, it was the foundation of what came next. Their eyes were on me now, expectant, like predators sensing weakness. Diane leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the tissue she'd been twisting reduced to shreds on the coffee table. Mark cleared his throat, his foot still bouncing, while Claire finally met my gaze, her lips parting as if to speak. But I wasn't ready to dive into their demands just yet. My mind, still reeling from those echoes of invisibility, latched onto the turning point, the night everything shifted, when their rejection didn't just hurt me, it forged me. I sat there, the weight of the room pressing in, and let the memory unfold, not as a distraction, but as armor. This wasn't about reliving pain, it was about remembering how I turned it into power. It happened 15 years ago, on a rainy evening in that same cramped house they'd once called home. I was 23, fresh from another ignored milestone, selling a freelance coding project that netted me enough to move out. I'd come over for what I thought was a casual dinner, but tension hung in the air like the storm outside. Thunder rumbled as I helped set the table, plates clinking softly. Diane was quieter than usual, her movements jerky as she folded napkins. Mark lounged on the couch, scrolling his phone, and Claire was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. I remember wiping my hands on a dish towel, the fabric rough against my skin, and asking, "Everything okay?" Diane paused, her back to me, shoulders stiffening. She turned slowly, her face pale under the kitchen light. "Sit down, Tara," she said, her voice flat. We all gathered in the living room, the same worn couches sagging under us. Rain pattered against the windows, blurring the outside world. Diane pulled a folder from the side table, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened it. "We should have told you sooner," she started, sliding papers toward me. Adoption documents, yellowed, official stamps faded, my birth name, different parents listed, the truth staring back in black ink. I gripped the edges, paper crinkling, my breath catching. "What is this?" I whispered, though I knew. Mark shifted uncomfortably, his knee brushing mine. Claire looked at her hands, nails picking at cuticles. "You're not ours biologically," Diane continued, her tone matter of fact, like discussing the weather. "We adopted you as a baby, but now, it's time you knew." No warmth, no apology, just facts, dropped like stones. I scanned the pages, dates blurring, born to strangers, handed over. "Why now?" I asked, voice cracking. Mark snorted softly. "You're grown, no need to pretend anymore." Claire nodded faintly. Diane's eyes hardened. "We've done enough, you're on your own path." The words landed like slaps. I stood, papers fluttering to the floor, my chest heaving. Thunder cracked outside, mirroring the storm inside me. They didn't hug me, didn't explain further, just watched as I grabbed my coat, rain soaking me as I fled to my car. That drive home was a blur, wipers slashing rain, headlights piercing the dark. I pulled over on a side street, engine idling, and sobbed, fists pounding the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. Betrayal burned hot, then cooled to something sharper, resolve. They hadn't just hidden my origins, they'd made me feel like an outsider all along. But in that moment, alone in the car, rain drumming on the roof, an idea sparked. Tech had always been my escape, coding late nights to drown out the silence of their indifference. What if I built something massive, in secret? Not for their approval, but to prove I didn't need it. I wiped my eyes, mirror showing red-rimmed determination, and drove to my tiny apartment. The next weeks were a grind. I quit my freelance gigs, pooling every cent into a solo project, an AI-driven platform for personalized learning, something schools desperately needed but couldn't afford to build. I set up in my studio, desk cluttered with energy drink cans and notebooks scribbled with algorithms. Mornings blurred into nights, fingers flying over keys, code compiling with soft beeps. Isolation hit hard, no family calls, no friends to vent to yet. I'd paced the room, bare feet on cold linoleum, muttering solutions to bugs. One night, around 2 a.m., the screen glowed as I hit a wall. Data integration failing. I slammed my laptop shut, head in hands, tears threatening. "Why bother?" I whispered to the empty room. But their faces flashed, Diane's dismissal, Mark's smirk, and I reopened it, debugging line by line until dawn. Months turned to years. I bootstrapped, living on ramen and coffee, my bank account dipping dangerously low. Rejections piled up, investors laughing at a lone wolf with no pedigree. One pitch in a sterile conference room, a suit leaned back, chuckling. "Cute idea, but who's backing you, family?" I clenched my jaw, nails digging into palms. "Just me," I said, exiting with head high. That fueled more late nights, refining the AI, testing on beta users quietly. Breakthrough came at year 3. A school district trial exploded, users raving, revenue trickled, then surged. I hired my first employee, Lena, sharp and loyal, from a coffee shop chat. We expanded, office in a warehouse, screens humming. By year 5, it was an empire in shadows. Valuations climbed silently. I kept it under wraps, no press releases. Friends emerged, colleagues who saw my vision, celebrated wins with high fives and beers. But family? Radio silence. I'd drive past their house sometimes, lights on, and feel a pang but push it down. Success wasn't revenge yet, it was survival. The platform evolved. Millions of users, acquisitions rolling in. Billions accumulated, invested wisely. I bought the mansion quietly, furnished it with pieces that felt like me, modern, unapologetic. Back in the present, that foundation steadied me. Diane's voice broke through. "Tara, about why we're here." But I held her gaze, my fingers relaxed now. The discovery hadn't broken me, it built this. The struggle, the hidden triumphs, they were mine alone. And now, facing them, I felt the weight of it all, ready to wield it. The air thickened as Mark leaned in, his cologne cloying. "We've fallen on hard times," he said, voice gruff. Claire nodded, eyes pleading. But my mind lingered on that rainy night, the spark that ignited everything. They thought they could claim my success. They had no idea how deeply I'd buried the roots. I breathed out slowly, chest easing. This confrontation was the culmination, but the real victory? It started in that storm, with me choosing to build instead of break. Mark's words hung in the air, his voice rough around the edges, like he was forcing out a confession he'd rehearsed in the mirror. "We've fallen on hard times," he repeated, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, his fingers interlacing tightly until his knuckles paled. Claire nodded again, her eyes darting to Diane, who sat rigid, her lips a thin line, as if admitting need was beneath her. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch, my gaze fixed on the coffee table's glass surface, reflecting the soft glow of the overhead lights. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a subtle vibration against my thigh, and I knew without checking it was probably another update from the board about the deal. The massive merger that could push my company's valuation into the stratosphere, sealing partnerships with global players. But here, in this room, with them, it felt like a distant hum, overshadowed by the dread I'd carried all morning while preparing for this inevitable intrusion. That buzz pulled me inward, to the hours before their arrival, when the mansion was still my sanctuary, not this tense arena. I'd woken early, the sun just cresting the hills, filtering through the blinds and slivers that danced on the hardwood floors. My alarm had chimed softly at 5:30 a.m., as always, but today I hit snooze once, twice, my hand fumbling on the nightstand, reluctant to face what was coming. Finally, I swung my legs over the bed's edge, feet sinking into the plush rug, and padded to the bathroom. The mirror fogged from the hot shower, and as I wiped it clear, my reflection stared back, lines of fatigue around my eyes from late-night negotiations. The deal was teetering. Lawyers haggling over clauses, investors jittery about market dips. One wrong move, and it could crumble. But them? Their text from Diane last night, "We need to see you tomorrow," urgent, had layered on a different pressure. I dressed deliberately, choosing a simple black blouse and slacks, nothing flashy, my fingers buttoning each one slowly as if armoring up. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee. I'd set the machine last night. I poured a mug, steam rising, and sipped it black, bitter on my tongue, standing at the island. Lena had arrived by then, her key turning in the lock with a familiar click. "Morning, boss," she said, dropping her bag on the counter, her eyes scanning my face. "You look like you didn't sleep? The merger docs?" I nodded but added, "And family. They're coming." Her brow furrowed, hand pausing mid-reach for a cup. "Them? After all this time?" I set my mug down with a soft thud. "Yeah, saw the journal article, I bet. Prepare the living room. Make it neutral. No personal photos out." We moved through the house together, a quiet routine disrupted by purpose. In the living room, I straightened cushions on the couches, fluffing them with quick pats, while Lena adjusted the blinds, letting in diffused light that softened the edges of the room. I paused at the mantel, fingers tracing a framed award from last year's tech summit, my name etched in gold. "Hide this," I said, handing it to her. She tucked it into a drawer, the wood sliding shut with a whisper. No reminders of my wins. I didn't want their envy flaring too soon. Upstairs in my office, I printed the documents, old emails, letters, even a scanned copy of the adoption papers, my printer humming steadily, pages stacking neatly. I flipped through them, paper whispering, each one a brick in the wall I'd build today. "You sure about this?" Lena asked from the doorway, arms crossed. I stapled the stack, metal clicking. "I have to be. The deal closes in days, I can't have distractions." The phone buzzed again then, back in the present, jolting me. I slipped it out, screen lighting up. A text from my CFO. "Partners want a call in 30. Final tweaks." My thumb hovered over the reply, but I pocketed it, turning back to them. The preparation wasn't just physical, it was this mental fortification, layer by layer, against their self-serving pleas. Diane shifted now, her chair creaking faintly. "Tara, please," she said, voice softening in that manipulative way I remembered, hands unfolding to gesture openly. "We're family. We've made mistakes, but blood." "Adoptive," I corrected quietly, my voice even, fingers drumming lightly on my knee. The dread coiled tighter. I could see their desperation in the way Mark's jaw clenched, Claire's foot tapping an anxious rhythm on the rug. All morning as I'd paced the halls, heels echoing, I'd rehearsed this. Visualized their faces, the excuses they'd spin. I stopped in the foyer earlier, adjusting a vase of fresh lilies, petals soft under my touch, their scent cloying now in memory. "Security on standby?" I'd asked Lena over the intercom, her voice crackling back affirmative. The mansion was ready, doors locked behind them, cameras discreetly watching. But the deal loomed larger in my mind, a ticking clock. If it went through, my net worth would double overnight. Headlines everywhere. They'd timed this perfectly, lured by that journal piece. I recalled skimming it yesterday, words blurring. Tara Klein's empire on cusp of historic merger. Pride had swelled, but now with them here, it mixed with wariness. Claire spoke up, her voice tentative, hands ringing in her lap. "Aunt Tara? Wait, just Tara, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't bad." "Aunt?" The word grated. I'd never been that to her kids, not after the cutoff. My niece and nephew, whom I'd only seen in photos online, flickered in my thoughts. Innocence in this mess. But I pushed it aside, focusing on the micro-shifts. Diane's subtle lean as if closing distance, Mark's eyes flicking to the artwork, appraising. The preparation had included this. Observing, not reacting. My watch vibrated. Another alert. "Board's anxious," it read. I exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping a fraction. This confrontation had to end clean. No loose ends bleeding into my work. The room felt charged, their anticipation mirroring my dread. I'd fortified the mansion, my mind, but the deal's fragility made every second count. "Go on," I said finally, voice calm, crossing my legs, ankle over knee. "Tell me about these hard times." My fingers rested lightly on the armrest, ready. The preparation was done. Now the unraveling began. But inside, the teetering deal pulsed like a second heartbeat. Calls to make, emails piling. Their arrival wasn't just an intrusion. It was a test of boundaries I'd set that morning, vow by vow, as I locked away vulnerabilities. Lena lingered in the hall, shadow visible, a silent ally. I was ready. But the dread lingered, a quiet churn in my gut. Diane's eyes flickered with a mix of calculation and feigned warmth as she absorbed my prompt, her fingers smoothing the fabric of her skirt in small, repetitive strokes. Mark uncrossed his legs, leaning back into the couch with a creak of leather, his gaze sharpening like he was about to launch into a sales pitch. Claire bit her lower lip, her hands still twisting in her lap, nails leaving faint red marks on her skin. The room's air conditioner hummed softly, a steady backdrop to the tension, and I felt Lena's presence just outside the doorway, her shadow shifting slightly as she listened. They weren't diving straight into the ask, no. They circled first, testing the waters with words that dripped condescension disguised as concern. It was their way, always had been, to poke, to undermine, before begging. I sat still, my posture straight, fingers lightly gripping the armrest, bracing for the gauntlet. Diane started it, her voice pitching up in that artificial sweetness I remembered from childhood scoldings. "Tara, dear, you've really made something of yourself here," she said, her eyes sweeping the room again, lingering on the abstract painting above the fireplace, a bold splash of colors I'd chosen for its energy. Her tone implied surprise, like she couldn't believe I'd pulled it off. "I mean, this house, it's so big. Do you ever get lonely rattling around in all this space by yourself?" She tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips, but her eyes didn't match it. They narrowed slightly, probing for vulnerability. Mark chuckled low, his hand rubbing his chin, stubble rasping under his fingers. "Yeah, Tara, must be tough managing all this without a real family around. We saw that article, tech billionaire, huh? Sounds fancy, but is it all it's cracked up to be? All those late nights? No one to share it with?" I felt the jab land, my jaw tightening just a fraction, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met his gaze steadily, watching how he avoided direct eye contact, his eyes dropping to his shoes for a split second. Claire jumped in, her voice softer but no less cutting, leaning forward with her elbows on her knees. "It's impressive, really. I mean, who would have thought? You were always so independent. Remember how you'd lock yourself in your room with that computer? We used to joke you were talking to aliens or something." She laughed lightly, a forced tinkle, her fingers plucking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "But now look at you, successful and all. Though, doesn't it get exhausting? All that pressure. Mark and I, we have our families to lean on, kids, spouses, keeps things grounded. You must miss that stability." The words piled on, each one a backhanded compliment wrapped in pity, their faces a mask of concern that didn't reach their eyes. Diane nodded along, her foot tapping subtly against the rug, a rhythmic annoyance. "Exactly. We've been worried about you, Tara, all these years, no word from you. We figured you were off doing your tech thing, but success like this, it changes people, makes them forget their roots." She paused, her hands clasping together again, knuckles whitening. "We're proud, of course, but is it fulfilling, really? Claire's got her nursing career, helping people every day. Mark's in finance, building something solid for his kids. What you do, it's innovative, sure, but does it have heart, or is it just numbers on a screen?" I breathed in slowly, my chest rising and falling evenly, fingers pressing into the fabric of the couch to ground myself. Their questions weren't innocent, they were digs, reminders of how they'd always framed my path as odd, unworthy. Mark leaned in now, his voice dropping conspiratorially, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Come on, level with us. That journal piece made it sound glamorous, but between you and me, it's probably a lot of smoke and mirrors, right? Tech bubbles burst all the time. Remember that startup you were in back then? Fizzled out quick. Good thing you bounced back, but how sustainable is it? We're family, you can be honest." His eyes flicked to Claire, who nodded encouragingly, her heel bouncing now, syncing with Diane's tap. The barrage continued, veiled insults layering like sediment. Diane's turn again. "And your personal life? No husband, no kids? At your age, Tara, that's brave. I admire it, really. But don't you worry about the future? Who'll take care of you when all this," she gestured vaguely at the room, her ring catching the light, "fades? We've got each other, grandkids running around. It's what life's about." Claire added, her voice pitching higher. "Yeah, my little ones ask about Aunt Tara sometimes. I tell them you're busy changing the world. But they'd love to meet you, if you know you're not too swamped with meetings and all that." Mark snorted softly, crossing his arms, muscles flexing under his shirt. "Swamped is right. Bet you don't even have time for hobbies anymore. We still do our family barbecues, simple stuff, keeps us human." Each word chipped at me, but I observed it clinically, noting the microsigns of their discomfort. Diane's forced smile cracking at the edges, Mark's knee jiggling faster, Claire's gaze dropping to her lap more often. They were masking desperation with this contempt, trying to level the field by belittling my world. My phone vibrated again in my pocket, a reminder of the real stakes outside this room, the merger call looming. But I stayed present, letting their words wash over without retort yet. It's not easy, I said neutrally, my voice calm, watching Diane's eyes widen slightly at my lack of defense. That through them, Mark's smirk faltered, his hand dropping to rub his thigh. They pressed on, relentless. Diane. We're just saying, Tara, success is great, but at what cost? You look tired. Those eyes, bags under them, workaholic, huh? We always knew you'd go far, but maybe too far. Totally. I balance work and home. It's healthier. You should try it. Amen. Bet your employees run circles around you. Leadership's tough without that family backbone. The compliments twisted into barbs, their postures shifting. Diane straightening, Mark uncrossing his arms, Claire smoothing her hair, as if sensing they were close to breaking through. But inside, I tallied each one, my resolve hardening. The gauntlet was their opener, a way to soften me before the real ask. Lena cleared her throat from the hall, a subtle signal. I nodded faintly, fingers relaxing. They thought this would weaken me. It only sharpened my edge. The room fell into a brief lull, their eyes expectant, waiting for me to crack. But I held firm, the contempt fueling rather than diminishing me. The lull didn't last long. Their expectant stares bored into me, the room's hum from the air conditioner now seeming louder in the pause. Diane's foot stopped tapping, her posture straightening as she drew in a breath, her chest rising visibly under her blouse. Mark uncrossed his arms, leaning forward again, his elbows digging into his thighs, while Claire's hands stilled in her lap, her fingers interlocking tightly. They exchanged glances, quick, almost imperceptible, Diane nodding faintly to Mark, as if giving him the go-ahead. The shift was palpable, their masks of concern cracking to reveal the raw need beneath. What started as probing jabs now escalated, the conversation turning on a dime from veiled insults to outright pleas, laced with hypocrisy that made my skin crawl. I remained seated, my legs still crossed, ankle flexing slightly, waiting for them to lay it bare. Mark broke first, his voice dropping an octave, gruffer now, like he was swallowing pride. Look, Tara, we're not here to beat around the bush, he said, rubbing his hands together, palms rasping dryly. Things have been rough for us, real rough. He paused, his eyes flicking up to mine, then away, settling on the floor. My business, the finance firm I started, it's tanked, bad investments, market crash, you name it. I'm drowning in debt, creditors calling non-stop. His knee started bouncing again, faster this time, shoe sole thumping softly against the rug. Claire chimed in, her voice wavering, leaning in closer, her breath quickening. And me. Tom's job got cut last year, we're behind on the mortgage, kids' school fees piling up, the hospital cut my hours, budget issues, we're scraping by, Tara, barely. She bit her lip harder, a small indent forming, her eyes glistening with unshed tears that looked practiced. Diane took over, her hands gesturing openly now, palms up in a supplicating pose. We've all hit rock bottom, dear. My pension's not enough, and with the house, repairs, medical bills from last year's scare, we're family, Tara. Blood or not, we raised you, that means something. Her voice cracked on raised, but her eyes stayed dry, sharp, watching my reaction. They wove in the fake bonds seamlessly, invoking a history they'd shattered. Mark nodded vigorously, his head bobbing. Exactly. We've stuck together through thick and thin, now it's your turn to help out. That's what families do. Claire added, her voice pleading. Think of the kids, your niece and nephew. They deserve better than this struggle. You're their aunt. Don't let them suffer because of old grudges. The demands came next, blunt and staggering. Mark cleared his throat, his fingers clenching into fists on his knees. We need a bailout, $5 million split between us. It's nothing to you. That article said your company's worth billions, pocket change. He tried a smile, but it twisted into a grimace, his lips pressing thin. Diane leaned forward, her chair creaking, hands reaching across the table as if to grasp mine, though she stopped short. Yes, Tara, invest in us. Mark could restart his firm, Claire stabilize her home. I'd finally retire properly. We're not asking for charity, it's an investment in family legacy. Claire's tears spilled now. One drop tracing down her cheek, she wiped it with the back of her hand, sniffling softly. Please, Tara, for old time's sake. We regret how things ended back then. We were wrong to push you away, but now with your success, it's like fate bringing us back. Hypocrisy dripped from every word, their invocations of family ringing hollow against the memories they'd triggered earlier. I watched the micro-shifts, Diane's subtle glance at the chandelier, as if mentally appraising it. Mark's swallow, Adam's apple bobbing. Claire's fidgeting with her ring, twisting it around her finger. They painted a picture of unity, but it was self-serving, glossing over the years of silence, the exclusion. "We've thought about you often," Diane continued, her tone warming artificially, fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Wondered how you were. Proud, really, seeing your name in the papers, but pride doesn't pay bills. Help us, and we'll make it right. Dinners, holidays, the whole family thing again." Mark grunted agreement, his fist unclenching slowly. "Yeah, no more bad blood. Wire the money, and we're square. You owe us that much for the start we gave you." The escalation built, their voices overlapping in urgency. "Claire, my kids idolize you from afar. Let them know their aunt cares. It's practical. Tax write-off for you, lifeline for us. Don't turn your back now. That's not who we raised." Each plea invoked bonds they'd severed, their faces flushing with the effort, sweat beading on Mark's forehead. I felt the weight of it, my own hands steady in my lap, but inside, a quiet anger simmered, not explosive but steady, like code compiling errors I'd fit. They assumed entitlement, ignoring the neglect, the invisibility. My phone vibrated once more, ignored. The merger could wait a beat longer. As they pressed, details spilled. Mark's failed ventures, gambled on stocks, bad luck. Claire's hardships, Tom's unemployed, depressed. Diane's woes, alone now since your father passed. They layered guilt, eyes pleading, postures supplicating. Diane's hands clasped in prayer-like fashion, Mark's shoulders slumping, Claire dabbing her eyes with a tissue pulled from her bag. "10 million if 5's too low?" Mark blurted, voice rising, his foot stomping once. "Whatever it takes." The hypocrisy peaked, their family mantra a weapon, wielded without shame. I let them exhaust themselves, observing the cracks, Diane's voice straining, Mark's eyes darting to the door, Claire's sniffles turning ragged. The conversation had escalated from contempt to this raw begging, their financial ruin laid bare, demands hanging like a noose. But in their eyes I saw no real remorse, only greed, masked as reconciliation. Finally, as Diane trailed off, her hands dropping to her sides, the room fell silent again, their breaths heavy. They waited, expectant, the hypocrisy exposed in the quiet. My turn loomed, but I savored the shift, fingers tapping once on my knee. The silence after their pleas felt thick, almost tangible, like a fog settling over the room, muting even the distant hum of the air conditioner. Diane's hands remained clasped in that prayer pose, her fingers twitching slightly as if itching to reach out and grab what she wanted. Mark's shoulders stayed slumped, his eyes locked on mine now, unblinking, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple despite the cool air. Claire dabbed at her eyes one last time, the tissue crumbling in her fist, her sniffle echoing softly. They'd laid it all out, the debts, the regrets, the multi-million ask, and now they waited, their collective gaze heavy on me, expecting capitulation. It was the peak of their assault, this moment where I was supposed to feel the pull of guilt, the weight of their fabricated family ties dragging me down. My chest tightened, a familiar ache from years of their dismissals resurfacing, making my breath shallow. But before I could form a response, my phone buzzed sharply on the side table, not a subtle vibration but an insistent ring, cutting through the tension like a knife. I glanced at it instinctively, the screen lighting up with my CFO's name. "Alex, urgent." My hand hovered for a second, fingers curling slightly, aware of their stares intensifying. Diane's lips parted as if to protest the interruption, her brow furrowing. "Tara, we're in the middle of—" she started, but I held up a finger, my voice firm. "I have to take this." Mark huffed, crossing his arms tightly, his biceps straining against his sleeves, while Claire shifted uncomfortably, her foot resuming its anxious tap. The ring persisted, shrill in the quiet, and I picked up, pressing the phone to my ear, turning slightly away from them to create a sliver of privacy. "Alex," I said evenly, though my pulse quickened, sensing the timing wasn't coincidence. "Tara, it's done." Alex's voice burst through, excited, almost breathless. "The merger closed 5 minutes ago, partners signed off, full terms, no concessions, valuation just hit $15 billion, Wall Street Journal's pushing a real-time update, your net worth. It's north of $8 billion now. Congrats, boss, this changes everything." His words hit like a surge, my free hand gripping the armrest, nails digging into the leather, leaving faint crescent marks. I felt a rush, adrenaline mixing with relief, my shoulders relaxing for the first time since they'd arrived. The room seemed to sharpen, the light from the windows brighter, their faces clearer in their frozen anticipation. I murmured, "Thanks, Alex. Send the details," and hung up, the click echoing in my ear. Setting the phone down slowly, screen still glowing with follow-up texts, confetti emojis from the team, I turned back to them, my expression neutral, but inside a shift had occurred. This wasn't just success, it was untouchable now, a fortress they'd never breach. They sensed it immediately. Diane's eyes widened, her hands dropping to her lap with a soft slap, fingers splaying open. "What was that?" she demanded, voice pitching higher, leaning forward so abruptly her chair scooted an inch. Mark uncrossed his arms, his posture straightening, a flicker of calculation in his gaze. "Sounded important. Good news?" Claire wiped her nose, her tears forgotten, head tilting curiously. I paused, letting the moment stretch, watching their micro-reactions. Diane's swallow, throat working visibly, Mark's tongue darting to wet his lips, Claire's hands smoothing her skirt repeatedly. The humiliation they'd tried to heap on me, painting me as the lonely, obligated outsider, evaporated in that call. Instead, it revealed the chasm, my world accelerating while theirs crumbled. My phone dinged again, a notification from the journal app. I tapped it open, the headline blazing, Tara Klein seals mega merger, tech empire valued at $15 billion, billionaire status solidified. I held it up briefly, screen facing them, the text clear even from across the table. "The deal I was working on," I said calmly, voice steady, though my heart pounded with quiet triumph. "It's official, my company's worth more than ever." Diane's face paled, her lips pressing into a line, hands clenching the fabric of her pants. Mark leaned in, squinting at the screen, his breath quickening. $15 billion? That's... Jesus, Tara. Claire's eyes darted between us, her fingers twisting her ring faster, a soft click-click from the metal. The power shift was electric, rippling through the room. They grasped it, their bailout ask, once a reasonable slice, now pathetic against this scale. Diane recovered first, her voice forcing warmth. "That's wonderful, dear. See, this is why we came. With that kind of money, helping us is nothing." But her eyes betrayed greed, pupils dilating slightly. Mark nodded eagerly, his knee bouncing double time. "Exactly, congrats and all, but think about it. Family first. This just makes it easier." Claire smiled tentatively, her tear-streaked cheeks flushing. "Yeah, Aunt Tara, imagine what you could do for the kids now." But the call had changed me in that instant, not just confirming wealth but stealing my resolve. I set the phone down with a deliberate clink, fingers lingering on the cool glass. The deepest sting of their pleas that manufactured humiliation dissolved into clarity. They weren't here for reconciliation. They were vultures, circling at the scent of success. Lena stepped into the doorway then, her presence a silent bolster, arms crossed, watching them with narrowed eyes. I felt the weight lift, my breath deepening, as if the call had injected armor. They pressed, voices overlapping in a desperate scramble. "Diane, Tara, this proves you're set. Share the blessing. Come on, wire it now. Let's celebrate." The kids would be so grateful. Each word bounced off me, their postures leaning in hungrily, hands gesturing more animatedly. But I observed it detached, noting Diane's forced smile cracking, Mark's sweat now visible on his collar, Claire's fidgeting turning frantic. The revelation hung there, untouchable proof of my worth, shifting the dynamic irrevocably. No more humiliation, only their grasping exposed. My fingers tapped the phone once more, savoring the glow of the headline. This was the turning point, the external seal on years of hidden grind. As they waited, breaths held, I finally spoke, voice cool. "Interesting timing," I said, eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. The power was mine now, the scale of my success a wall they couldn't climb. Their reactions to my words were immediate, a scramble of stunned expressions rippling across their faces like a wave crashing against rocks. Diane's mouth opened slightly, her lips forming a small O of surprise, her hands freezing mid-gesture as if caught in the act of reaching for something intangible. Mark blinked rapidly, his eyes widening, then narrowing, his fists clenching on his knees until the veins stood out on his forearms. Claire let out a soft gasp, her hand flying to her chest, fingers splaying over her collarbone, the ring on her finger catching the light in a brief flash. The room, moments ago charged with their desperate pleas, now crackled with a new energy. their greed exposed, scrambling to adapt to the revelation of my amplified success. They didn't congratulate me genuinely. Instead, they pivoted, voices tumbling over each other in a frantic bid to reframe their demands. Diane recovered quickest, her voice pitching up in forced enthusiasm, leaning forward so far her elbows nearly touched the coffee table. Tara, that's incredible. See, this is Providence. With this merger helping us wouldn't even dent your fortune. It's perfect timing. Her fingers drummed rapidly on the table's edge, a staccato beat betraying her anxiety. Mark jumped in, his posture shifting upright, shoulders squaring as he rubbed his palms together briskly. Yeah, exactly. 8 billion? Damn, sis, or Tara. That's game-changing. Wire us the 5 mil now and we'll call it a family investment. Hell, make it 10. What's the difference? His eyes gleamed, darting around the room again, as if mentally claiming pieces of my life. Claire nodded vigorously, her earlier tears forgotten, wiping her cheeks with quick swipes. Think of the kids. With that kind of money, you could set them up for life. We're all in this together now. Your success is our success, right? The hypocrisy hit me like a cold draft, their words twisting family into a convenient tool once more, ignoring the chasm they'd created. I sat there letting them babble, my hands folded calmly in my lap, fingers interlaced without tension. Inside, though, a steady resolve built, fueled by the call's confirmation. This wasn't just rejection, it was exposure. They scrambled harder, voices rising. Diane, we've always believed in you deep down. This proves we were right to encourage your independence. No hard feelings about the past. Water under the bridge. Let's move forward. Bank details ready? Please, Tara. Regrets eating us up. Your niece and nephew need this. I waited until their words petered out, the scramble leaving them breathless, faces flushed. Then, slowly, I reached for the folder on the side table. The one I'd prepared that morning, its manila surface smooth under my fingertips. I flipped it open with a soft rustle, pulling out the stack of documents, pages whispering as I laid them on the coffee table one by one. Emails from years ago, printed in crisp black ink, letters with their signatures, even photos from family events where I was cropped out or absent. Let's talk about family, I said evenly, my voice cutting through the remnants of their pleas, watching their eyes drop to the papers. Diane's hand trembled as she picked up the first email, dated 15 years back, her own words. Tara, since you're not blood, don't expect inheritance or invites. She set it down quickly, as if burned, her fingers recoiling. That was a misunderstanding, she muttered. But her voice wavered, eyes avoiding mine. Mark grabbed a letter next, his scrawl at the bottom. Stay away, we're done pretending. He crumpled the edge slightly, his jaw clenching, a muscle ticking. Old news, Tara, people change. Claire scanned a photo. Thanksgiving, them smiling without me, her face paling, hand covering her mouth. I continued calm, pointing to each piece. This is the neglect, years of exclusion, dismissals, you celebrated each other, ignored me. When I found out about the adoption, you didn't comfort. You cast out. My finger tapped an email from Claire. Not really family, don't bother coming, she whispered. I didn't mean, but trailed off, tears starting anew, genuine this time, streaking her makeup. Their scramble turned defensive. Diane's voice rose. We were stressed. Raising kids isn't easy. Mark, you were difficult, always off in your world. We tried reaching out once. But I didn't raise my voice, just laid out more proof. A timeline I'd compiled, dates of ignored achievements, their social media posts praising each other while silent on me. You only came because of the journal, not regret, not love, hypocrisy. Diane's hands shook, dropping a page that fluttered to the floor. Mark's face reddened, fists pounding his thighs once. This is low, Tara, dredging up the past. Claire sobbed quietly, dabbing with the crumpled tissue. The exposure deepened. I pulled the adoption papers last, sliding them across. You said duty done, now bail out? No. Their stunned faces crumpled further, Diane slumping back, hands covering her face, Mark standing abruptly, pacing 2 steps, then sitting, Claire whispering apologies through tears. The scramble peaked in pleas. Forgive us. We'll change. But it rang hollow, their eyes still calculating. Finally I stood, smoothing my blouse with deliberate strokes, the folder closed with a snap. Request denied. But, I paused, their heads snapping up hopefully. I'll fund my niece and nephew's education directly. Trusts untouchable by you, to break the cycle. Claire's eyes widened, a mix of relief and resentment. Mark growled, "That's not enough." Diane, cruel. I turned toward the door, heels clicking steadily on the marble, Lena falling in beside me, her hand on my elbow supportively. "Security will show you out," I said over my shoulder, voice unwavering. Their voices rose in a final scramble, begging, accusing. But I didn't look back, pushing open the door to the foyer, fresh air hitting my face. The exit felt powerful, a release. The mansion's grandeur, mine alone again. As their car doors slammed outside, engine revving away, I exhaled, shoulders dropping, hypocrisy rejected, peace edging in. The echo of their car peeling out of the driveway lingered in my ears long after the sound faded, a gravelly crunch that marked the end of one chapter and the uneasy start of whatever came next. I stood in the foyer, the door clicking shut behind me, my hand still on the knob, cool metal grounding me as Lena squeezed my shoulder gently, her touch warm and reassuring. "You did good, Tara," she murmured, her voice soft but firm, eyes searching mine for any crack. I nodded, exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, my chest loosening as the adrenaline ebbed. The mansion felt larger now, quieter, the toxicity they'd brought dissipating like smoke. But the confrontation's residue clung. Diane's pleading eyes, Mark's clenched fists, Claire's sobs, and I needed to shake it off, to remind myself of what real support felt. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden hues through the windows, I gathered my chosen family, the friends and colleagues who'd become my anchors, for a simple dinner on the terrace. No grandeur, just genuine connection, a stark contrast to the venomous ambush I'd endured hours before. Lena had insisted on handling the details, her efficiency a balm as she texted the group. "Impromptu unwind at Tara's. Bring nothing but yourselves." By 7 p.m. they trickled in, car doors slamming with friendly familiarity, voices carrying laughter up the drive. First came Alex, my CFO, bounding up the steps with a bottle of wine tucked under his arm, his tie loosened, grin wide. "Heard about the merger close, and the family drama," he said, pulling me into a quick hug, his cologne earthy and comforting. I chuckled softly, my arms wrapping around him briefly, feeling the solidness of true alliance. "Word travels fast," I replied, but his eyes held no judgment, just pride. Behind him, Mia, my lead engineer, arrived with her partner Sam, their hands linked, Mia's curly hair bouncing as she waved. "We came straight from the lab, couldn't miss celebrating you," she said, squeezing my hand, her fingers calloused from hours at the keyboard, a reminder of shared late nights debugging code. We migrated to the terrace, the outdoor lights flickering on automatically, string bulbs draping like stars above the long wooden table Lena had set with simple linens and candles. The air smelled of jasmine from the garden below, a soft breeze rustling leaves, carrying away the last wisps of the day's tension. Raj, our marketing head, showed up next, bearing a tray of homemade samosas, his laugh booming as he set them down. "For the billionaire boss who still codes her own fixes," he teased, clapping me on the back, his hand lingering in solidarity. Last was Jordan, a freelance collaborator turned confidant, slipping in quietly with a bouquet of wildflowers, petals vibrant against the twilight. "Heard you slayed some dragons today," they said, voice low, eyes warm as they arranged the flowers in a vase, stems snapping softly. As we settled around the table, plates clinking with past dishes, grilled veggies, pasta salad, those samosas steaming, the conversation flowed easy, unforced, a far cry from the barbed exchanges with my adoptive family. No one probed for weaknesses, instead they toasted the merger first, glasses raised high, wine sloshing gently. "To Tara, who built this from pain and pixels," Alex said, his voice carrying over the group, eyes meeting mine with genuine admiration. Clinks echoed, crystal ringing, and I felt a warmth spread through me, my fingers wrapping around the stem of my glass, cool against my palm. Mia leaned in, her elbow brushing mine. "Tell us about the call. That moment it closed. Bet your heart skipped." I recounted it briefly, voice steady, describing Alex's excited tone, the headline's glow, but omitting the family's timing for now. They listened intently, nods and murmurs, Raj's eyes widening. "Incredible, you've earned every bit." The contrast hit deeper as the night unfolded. With them, there was no condescension, just celebration of my journey, flaws and all. Jordan shared a story from our early collab, mimicking my frustrated pacing during a bug hunt, hands waving animatedly. Laughter bubbled up, my own joining in, a release that loosened knots in my shoulders. Sam asked thoughtful questions about the AI's future impact, pen in hand scribbling notes on a napkin, while Mia geeked out on tech specs, her fork gesturing. No backhanded compliments, pure enthusiasm. Lena, ever the host, refilled plates, her smile quiet, but when she caught my eye it said everything. This is real family. Midway through, as candles flickered lower, wax dripping slowly, the talk turned personal. Alex mentioned his own family rift, voice softening. Cut off my brother years ago, toxic as hell. But finding you all? Saved me. Nods around the table, Mia squeezing Sam's hand. I opened up then, the words spilling naturally, describing the afternoon's confrontation. Their demands, the documents, my rejection. Hands paused mid-bite, eyes widening in empathy. Raj set his glass down with a thud. Bastards, after all they did? Jordan's fist clenched subtly on the table. You handled it with grace, proud of you. Claire's fake tears flashed in my mind. But here the support was unconditional, no strings. Lena added, and funding the kids? Classy move. Breaks the cycle without feeding the monsters. We lingered late, stars emerging overhead, conversation meandering to dreams, Raj's startup ideas, Mia's travel plans. Hugs goodbye were tight, lingering, Alex whispering, call anytime. As the last car pulled away, taillights fading, I stood on the terrace, arms wrapped around myself, the night's warmth lingering on my skin. This gathering wasn't just dinner, it was affirmation, the biological ties poison neutralized by chosen bonds. No demands, no hypocrisy, just hearts aligned in mutual uplift. The contrast crystallized peace within me, a quiet realization as I blew out the candles, wax hardening in pools. Toxicity bred isolation. This bred strength. My phone buzzed. A group text, love you Tara onward. I smiled, fingers tracing the screen. This was my family, earned through shared battles, not blood. The morning after the terrace dinner, sunlight streamed through my bedroom windows, casting long shadows across the rumpled sheets where I'd finally crashed around midnight, the laughter of my friends still echoing in my mind like a soothing balm. I rolled over, my hand fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, the cool glass screen lighting up with notifications that made my stomach twist, a barrage of missed calls and texts from numbers I hadn't saved but recognized all too well. Diane's name popped up first, her message terse. We need to talk. That wasn't fair. Mark's followed, more aggressive. You owe us more than trusts for the kids. Call back. Claire's was pleading. Please, Tara, let's fix this. I set the phone down with a soft clink, my fingers lingering on the edge. Feeling the vibration of another incoming call. Diane again. The aftermath had begun, their persistent attempts to breach the walls I'd just started building, and I knew this was the moment to fortify them, to establish rules that protected the peace I'd glimpsed last night. I swung my legs over the bed, feet hitting the cool hardwood floor, and padded to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, droplets tracing down my cheeks as I stared at my reflection, eyes clearer now, but guarded. The confrontation hadn't ended with their departure. It lingered in these digital intrusions, each one a tendril trying to pull me back into their chaos. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled of leftover coffee. Lena was already there, scrolling her tablet at the island, her brow furrowed. They've been blowing up my line too, she said without looking up, sliding a mug toward me, steam curling lazily. I took it, the warmth seeping into my palms, and sat across from her, our knees nearly touching under the counter. What did they say? I asked, voice steady, though my thumb tapped the mug's handle rhythmically. She set the tablet down, screen glowing with emails. Diane wants a meeting, claims regret. Mark threatened to go public, expose your cruelty. Claire's playing the kids card saying they miss their aunt. Lena's fingers drummed the counter, mimicking my tap, her eyes meeting mine with that fierce loyalty. Block them? I nodded slowly, sipping the coffee, bitter on my tongue, buying time to process. The attempts weren't surprising, their desperation had been raw, but each message chipped at the resolve I'd built, stirring old doubts. Was I too harsh? No, I reminded myself, gripping the mug tighter, knuckles paling. This was self-preservation. Not just block, I said finally, setting the mug down with a decisive thud. We need structure. Rules. We brainstormed over breakfast, plates of toast and fruit between us, crumbs scattering as I gestured. First rule, no direct contact. I'd route everything through a lawyer, impersonal, professional. Lena nodded, pulling up her contacts, fingers flying over the screen to text my attorney, Sarah. She can draft cease and desist if they escalate, Lena said, her voice clipping efficiently. I agreed, my fork spearing a strawberry, juice bursting as I bit into it, the sweetness a counter to the sour knot in my gut. Second, the trusts for the kids. Ironclad, managed by a third party, no parental access. I'd already initiated that yesterday, but now, confirming details felt like laying bricks. Sarah called back within minutes, her voice crackling over speakerphone, calm and authoritative. We'll set notifications for any violations, she assured, as I paced the kitchen, heels clicking on tile. And if they push, we can reference the documents you showed them, proof of prior estrangement. The calls kept coming as we spoke, my phone buzzing on the counter, screen flashing Mark's name. I declined it, finger swiping left with a satisfying whoosh, but it rang again immediately, insistent. Lena grabbed it, her thumb hovering. Let me, she answered, putting it on speaker, her tone icy. This is Tara's assistant, she's unavailable. Mark's voice boomed through, gravelly and angry. Put her on, this isn't over. I shook my head, mouthing, no, my hands clenching at my sides. Lena hung up, blocking the number with a few taps, the phone's interface beeping confirmation. Rule 3, all communication logged, she said, starting a shared doc on her tablet, fingers typing swiftly. We added entries, timestamps, content, building a record, each keystroke a reinforcement. By noon, emails flooded in. I sat at my desk upstairs, the merger docs spread out but ignored, my mouse clicking through inboxes. Diane's was lengthy, feigning remorse. We raised you better than this coldness. I forwarded it to Sarah without replying, my cursor hovering over delete before deciding against it. Evidence. Mark's was curt, demanding funds. Or we'll tell the press about the adoption secret. My breath caught, fingers freezing on the keyboard, a chill running down my spine. Public exposure? That was new leverage, but it hardened me. I called Sarah back, voice low, describing it. Extortion territory, she said, her pen scratching notes audibly. I'll send a letter today. No contact or legal action. I hung up, leaning back in my chair, the leather creaking, and blocked their emails, filters whirring to life. Claire tried social media next. A DM on an old account. The kids drew pictures for you. Attached were scans, crayon scribbles of houses and figures, innocent but weaponized. My thumb trembled over the screen, a pang hitting me, the cycle I wanted to break. But this was manipulation. I screenshotted, forwarded to the log, and blocked her, the app's confirmation popping up like a shield. Afternoon brought a surprise. A delivery van pulling up, horn beeping. I watched from the window, curtains twitching under my fingers. A box, return address their house. Lena signed for it, bringing it in, her gloves on as if handling contamination. Inside, old photos of me as a kid, a note from Diane. Remember who you are. I flipped through them, edges worn, my younger self smiling naively. Tears pricked, but I set them down, hand steady. Scan and archive, I told Lena, voice firm. Then donate. She nodded, whisking the box away. As evening fell, shadows lengthening across the office, I refined the rules alone, typing them into a personal manifesto on my laptop, keys clacking rhythmically. No guilt responses, therapy sessions booked for processing. Public statements prepped if needed, framed as privacy boundaries. And most crucially, prioritized chosen family. A text from Mia popped up. Coffee tomorrow? I replied yes, fingers smiling over the keys. The attempts had tested me, but each block, each log, built the fortress higher. By night, the phone silent at last, I stood at the window, arms crossed, watching stars emerge. The aftermath wasn't erosion, it was construction. Boundaries set, rules engaged. I was safe, finally. With the digital barriers firmly in place, the silence from their end was deafening at first. A void that allowed me to breathe freely for what felt like the first time in weeks. My phone no longer buzzed with their intrusions, the blocked numbers creating a buffer that let me refocus on the empire I'd built. Not as a weapon against them, but as a force for something bigger. That afternoon, after Lena and I had finalized the logs and Sarah had sent the legal letters, envelopes sealed with a crisp snap, stamps affixed with deliberate presses, I found myself in my office, staring out at the valley below, the sprawl of tech campuses glinting under the sun. The merger's success had opened doors, not just financially, but in influence, and I realized this was the moment to channel it purposefully, to reclaim the Klein name, tainted by their neglect, and redefine it through impact that echoed my journey. No grand announcement yet, Instead, a quiet, personal launch of a foundation dedicated to supporting overlooked youth in tech, starting with scholarships, including anonymous ones for my niece and nephew, to break cycles like the one that had scarred me. I sat at my desk, the leather chair creaking as I leaned back, fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing the first draft of the Foundation's charter. The words flowed, empowering the invisible innovators. My cursor blinked steadily, a rhythmic pulse matching my heartbeat as I outlined the mission: funds for education, mentorship for adoptees, or estranged kids pursuing STEM. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation, turning Klein from a symbol of exclusion to one of opportunity. Lena knocked softly, entering with a stack of printed merger reports, papers rustling as she set them down. "Sarah confirmed the trusts are active," she said, perching on the desk's edge, her legs swinging slightly. "Niece gets coding camps starting next summer, nephew's college fund vested at 18, no access for parents, ironclad." I nodded, my hand reaching for the reports, fingers flipping pages absently, ink smudging faintly on my thumb. The primary act unfolded that evening, not in a boardroom, but in a video call with Sarah and a small team of advisors I'd assembled quietly over the past month. I adjusted my webcam, the screen reflecting my face, calm, determined, as participants joined, their faces popping up in grid view. Sarah in her home office, bookshelves behind her, Dr. Ellis, a psychologist specializing in family trauma, sipping tea from a mug, and Ramon, a nonprofit expert, his background a blur of city lights. "Thanks for jumping on this," I started, my voice even, clicking to share my screen, the charter document filling the view, pixels sharpened as they leaned in virtually. Sarah's cursor highlighted a section, her voice crackling through speakers. "This clause, anonymous scholarships for at-risk youth, ties perfectly to your story without exposing it." I watched her type a note, keys clacking faintly over the line. We dove deeper, micro decisions building the framework. Ramon suggested partnerships with adoption agencies, his hand gesturing on camera, fingers pointing emphatically. "Start small, pilot program for 50 kids, focus on tech boot camps." I agreed, my mouse dragging to add bullet points, text appearing letter by letter. Dr. Ellis interjected softly, her glasses slipping down her nose. She pushed them up with a knuckle. "Incorporate emotional support, counseling stipends. Breaks the neglect cycle at its root." The idea resonated, my chest tightening briefly with memory, my own isolation, but I exhaled, typing it in, cursor flying. "Yes," I said, "and name it the Klein Innovation Fund, reclaim the legacy." They nodded, faces lighting up. Sarah's smile was small but genuine, her head tilting. As the call progressed, details sharpened. Budget allocations. $10 million initial endowment, my fingers calculating on a side notepad, pencil scratching paper. We discussed selection criteria. No family income checks, just potential and perseverance, mirroring my path. Ramon shared a screen, a mock application form appearing, fields for essays on overcoming adversity. I scrolled through it slowly, mouse wheel clicking, imagining applicants like young me, hungry, unseen. "Add a mentorship match," I suggested, voice firming. Dr. Ellis agreed, her pen tapping her chin audibly. "Pairs them with pros like you, chosen family vibes." The phrase hit home, I paused, fingers stilling on the keys, a quiet affirmation settling in. Micro-actions wove through, Sarah emailing a revised draft mid-call, attachment pinging in my inbox. I opened it, eyes scanning changes, red lines stark. "Looks solid," I murmured, approving with a click. Ramon mentioned tax implications, his voice quickening. I jotted notes, pen cap clicking open and shut between my teeth. The conversation turned personal, Dr. Ellis asking gently, "How does this feel, Tara? Reclaiming the name?" I leaned closer to the mic, breath fogging the screen slightly. "Empowering. Their Klein was exclusion, mine will be inclusion." Nods all around, Sarah's hand raising in a thumbs up, pixelated but clear. By call's end, an hour later, the foundation was nascent but real, documents signed digitally, my stylus scribbling on the tablet, signature looping smoothly. Launch quietly next month, I decided as goodbyes exchanged, windows closing one by one. Alone, screen dimming, I stood, stretching, arms overhead, vertebrae popping softly. The positive impact crystallized, not just funding my niece and nephew, breaking their cycle with education they couldn't squander, but extending to others, the Klein name now synonymous with uplift, not pain. I walked to the window, hands in pockets, fingers fiddling with a loose thread. Outside, lights twinkled in the valley, mirroring the spark inside me. This wasn't about erasing them, it was overwriting, creating legacy on my terms, scholarships blooming where neglect had withered. A text from Lena downstairs, "Dinner ready, proud of you." I smiled, descending stairs, each step lighter. The reclamation was underway, one deliberate action at a time. The days following the foundation's quiet launch blurred into a rhythm of normalcy, the mansion's halls echoing with the soft hum of my work, emails pinging, code compiling on my screens, but beneath it all, a subtle shift stirred within me, a final reflection that unfolded not in a dramatic epiphany, but in the quiet solitude of an evening walk through my garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of orange and pink, the air thick with the scent of blooming roses as I wandered the paths I'd designed myself years ago, gravel crunching under my sneakers with each deliberate step. My hands brushed the leaves of a nearby bush, dew cool on my fingertips, and I paused at a bench overlooking the valley, the same view that had once symbolized isolation, but now felt like expanse. This wasn't about replaying the confrontation or the Foundation's first scholarship awards. It was an internal reckoning, a deep dive into the realization that my worth had never been tied to their approval, adoptive or otherwise. It was always mine, forged in the fires of self-reliance. I sat down, the wood of the bench smooth against my palms as I gripped the edge, legs stretching out, ankles crossing. Memories surfaced gently, not as assaults but as lessons. The rainy night of the adoption reveal, Diane's cold dismissal echoing in my mind, her voice clipped like scissors cutting ties. Mark's smirks, Claire's averted eyes. They'd shaped me, yes, but not defined me. I'd built an empire not to spite them but to affirm myself, each line of code a declaration of value. My fingers traced patterns in the gravel at my feet, small stones shifting, and I thought of the invisibility, the ignored achievements, how they'd stung but also sparked. Without that pain, would I have pushed so hard? The merger's success, the billions, they were markers, but the real wealth was this inner certainty, blooming now, like the roses around me, thorns and all. Breathing deeply, the air filling my lungs with a cool rush, I let the reflection deepen. Self-validation wasn't a switch flipped by rejecting their bailout or funding the kids. It was a gradual unveiling, layers peeled back through chosen bonds. Lena's loyalty, Alex's toasts, Mia's shared geekouts. They saw me, not as a resource, but as whole. Blood family had offered conditional scraps. This was unconditional abundance. A bird called overhead, wings flapping softly, and I smiled faintly, lips curving without effort. Peace settled in my chest, warm and steady, replacing the old ache. It wasn't about their regret, self-serving, belated, but my release from needing it. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands, palms slapping together lightly, and walked further, path winding through taller plants, leaves rustling against my arms. The garden's end opened to a small pond, water rippling from a fountain's trickle, and I knelt there, fingers dipping into the cool surface, ripples spreading outward. This mirrored my impact, the foundation rippling to others, reclaiming legacy without bitterness. Worth was internal. The grit that turned rejection into code, isolation into innovation. No more chasing shadows of approval. I was the light. Tears came then, not sorrowful but cleansing, tracing down my cheeks as I wiped them with my sleeve, fabric soft against skin. Standing again, I circled back, steps lighter, the sky darkening to twilight, stars peeking through. Back inside, the house lights warm, I poured tea, mug steaming in my hands as I settled in the living room, the same spot they'd occupied. No ghosts lingered, just me, sipping slowly, the herbal taste grounding. The reflection culminated here. Peace and self-validation, worth intrinsic, unshakable. Their cycle broken, mine thriving, not in revenge but in quiet triumph. The sun had fully set by the time I finished my tea, the mug clinking softly as I set it in the sink, but that garden walk stayed with me, an anchor in the days that followed. It got me thinking, have you ever had to cut ties with family to find your own peace? It's tough, right? That moment when you realize your value doesn't come from them, but from within. It's liberating, but it doesn't happen overnight. I know I'm not alone in this. So many of us build our worth from the ground up, turning pain into power. If you've got a story like mine, maybe a family betrayal, a self-made success, or just that spark of realizing you're enough, share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you flipped the script, what boundaries you set, or how you found your chosen family. Your experiences could inspire someone else scrolling through, feeling invisible. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough in rejecting their bailout and funding the kids instead? Drop a comment below, let's chat about it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of resilience and real talk. Remember, your worth isn't up for debate. It's yours to claim. Keep building, keep shining. You've got this.